A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. On a Sabbath, Jesus went to dine at the home of one of the leading Pharisees, and the people there were observing him carefully. He told a parable to those who had been invited, noticing how they were choosing the places of honor at the table. When you are invited by someone to a wedding banquet, do not recline at table in the place of honor. A more distinguished guest than you may have been invited by him, and the host who invited both of you may approach you and say, "Give your place to this man." And then you would proceed with embarrassment to take the lowest place. Rather, when you are invited, go and take the lowest place, so that when the host comes to you, he may say, "My friend, move up to a higher position." Then you will enjoy the esteem of your companions at the table. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but the one who humbles himself will be exalted. Then Jesus said to the host who invited him, "When you hold a lunch or a dinner, do not invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or your wealthy neighbors, in case they may invite you back and you have repayment. Rather, when you hold a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind. Blessed indeed will you be because of their inability to repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous." The Gospel of the Lord. So, what was the answer to the question that I posed at the beginning of the Mass? Well, the answer is found in the very first line of the first reading, and it continues to be unfolded throughout the rest of the readings today, and culminates kind of in the Gospel. What is the virtue that is key, without which we cannot be faithful disciples of Jesus Christ, and with which we are not only faithful disciples, but the doorway is open to all of the other virtues? Well, let's listen to the beginning of the first reading and see what it says. "My child, conduct your affairs with humility, and you will be loved more than a giver of gifts. Humble yourself the more, the greater you are, and you will find favor with God." Humility, that is the key virtue, without which you have no other virtues. Virtues, discipleship of Jesus, cannot coexist with the pride that exalts ourselves in any way above others. But rather, humility prompts us to, as Jesus says in the Gospel, seek the lower place. What is so important about humility? Well, first of all, it doesn't really mean what we often think it means. It doesn't really mean coming down on yourself. It doesn't mean being inferior to others. It doesn't mean being put down or letting yourself be walked over. Humility comes from the Latin word humus, which means dirt. But again, not dirt in the sense of what we clean off of us or off of things, but rather dirt in the sense of earth, ground, that precious soil, which is the foundation of life, the earth from which all life comes. Remember, on Ash Wednesday we are told, remember that you are dust, and unto dust you shall return. But that's not the dust that you clean off the furniture every once in a while. That is the dust of the earth from which life comes. So humility, even in the origin of its word, is a life-giving virtue. It is the virtue by which we identify with where we are from. We become more and more aware of who and what we really are. That is what humility is. It puts us in touch with our true selves. And our true selves can exist only in relationship. God did not create us for isolation. Our true selves can manifest themselves only in relationship. So we are not inward looking, we are always outward focused. Pride puts us in a relationship with others too, where we see others as only as insofar as they benefit us. Pride gives rise to exploitation. Humility gives rise to ministry. Ministry is another interesting word. We often think ministry is performing acts of service. We think of ministry as doing something. It may be ministry within the church, doing the various things that are necessary for our worship. It may be ministry outside of the church, where together we join together in serving the poor, feeding the hungry, advocating for justice, working on behalf of those who are in need, visiting the sick, consoling the afflicted, and so on. All of that is ministry. But ministry is not primarily doing something. Ministry is primarily willfully, intentionally entering into a relationship with others. That is a relationship that, as I've said, springs from humility, a realization of who and what we are. Now, ministry also is an interesting word because clearly it's formed from two Latin words. The first one is minus, which means small. That's no surprise. You know, we have many words. Words that incorporate M-I-N-I usually mean something small. And the second part of it, however, is not so obvious. The second part of the word ministry comes from the Latin word stare, which means to stand. It's related actually to the Spanish word estar. If you know Spanish, you know there are two words that mean to be, ser and estar. Ser means something that you are, but estar means where you are. You know, yo estoy aquí means I am standing here, estar. So stare is to stand. Why do I belabor that point? Well, because you stand only in relationship to another. And a ministry means standing small. Standing small in relation to another. Now, that does not mean being put down. That does not mean groveling in the dirt. That does not mean letting yourself be walked all over. What it does mean is intentionally putting yourself into the position in which you lift up the other. The reason for standing small firmly is so that you can lift up the other person or the other group, the other people. We tend to think of ministry always in terms of service, of doing something. I think we need to begin to step back a little bit and say, whatever I do by way of service, I do because I am lifting up the other person. I do it in order to lift up the other person. So for us as disciples of Jesus, followers of Jesus, we hear the call to come and follow him. That does require humility, a recognition of our person, our dignity as human beings, but as people whose origins are from the earth. And then following Jesus, we hear his command to go forth. We are sent. So we are both disciples on the one hand and apostles on the other. Humility introduces us to Christ, lets Christ become one with us and work through us. Ministry, standing small, means that we obey his command, go forth and make me present through your works of service. Stand in relation to others small, so that you may lift them up. When we do works of service, it's kind of obvious that they need to come from our awareness of the dignity of the other person. It is never good to do works of service because I can show you that I'm better than you. I'm superior to you. And yet, how often do people do good to others because they feel that they are better than others, because they have a need to maybe show off in that way? No, we can't do that. We have to realize first, I am of service because I am standing small, and I want to lift you up. For each one of us, every day, people cross our paths whom we can, through our humility and our relationship of standing small to them, we can build them up. I think it's a good idea each morning to pray, and to pray for the people that we will encounter during the day, and to pray that we may truly be signs of Jesus Christ for them by lifting them up. It might be a kind word, it might be a helpful gesture, it might be giving of whatever it may be that the person needs in order to achieve their own greater dignity, in order to lift them up. But that won't happen unless we pray first for them and for ourselves, that we may truly be signs and instruments of Jesus Christ on their behalf.